there is no excessive use of force. And so your perception is wrong.
Tonight, what happens when officers cross the thin blue line?
He has threatened our whole department.
Police and the public afraid of this man.
I'm extremely disappointed in Fox 13 News.
A sheriff just hours away from receiving a powerful state position.
When mistakes are made, we go back and fix them.
Emails show accusations of a rigged process.
The video of him intimidating the officer was sickening.
A thank you letter written to himself.
I don't know what to say.
And a video that almost got past everyone.
It really comes down to the future, your future in the police department.
That is the creation of the thin blue line.
Tonight, Fox 13 investigates policing the police.
We have to be held to the highest standards.
Now, in Salt Lake City, Fox 13 investigative reporter Adam Herbitz.
The state of Utah is hoping to enter a new era when it comes to policing the police. The governor understands we give officers an incredible amount of power and authority, and for that reason, trust is everything. When there's a lack of trust, it prevents officers from doing their job. When there's too much, well, that's when we see videos like this. Accusations of Wasatch County Sheriff Jared Rigby bullying and intimidating police. We published it 2 years ago, but it got past the committee of his peers, it got past the Department of Public Safety, and it got past the governor. It never got past us.
Camera on.
Man, please have my glasses and my shoes. Thank you. I don't want to fight with you guys.
On March 31st, paramedics were treating Jesse James Rodriguez. Minutes earlier, his wife called to report he was drunk and wanted him out of the house. When Heber City Police got there, officers say Rodriguez tried to grab one of their guns.
I will stop you. I will stop you.
Come on. There you go.
Chief Dave Booth was on scene. He says he was done being patient and decided it was time to take Rodriguez to jail. Officers say until this point, everything they saw was appropriate. But watch the chief's right hand as he struggles to get Rodriguez into the back of the police car.
I couldn't hear or tell if the suspect was breathing, couldn't hear or tell. I did see that it was a grab and there was pressure placed on the trachea.
This man is a veteran Heber City police officer who left the department but is still too nervous to reveal his name or face.
Nobody's allowed to do whatever they want. I don't care if you're the chief of police. You can't do that to somebody that's handcuffed in the back of a police car. You can't do that.
This is where our story of policing the police begins. A systematic plan to make this go away as soon as possible. Step 1, the chief can't investigate himself, so Heber City chose Wasatch County Sheriff Jared Rigby to take the case.
My concerns as a citizen are more after the incident. Whether those officers felt they were retaliated against after the fact.
In Heber, they say if the city was looking for a neutral third party, Rigby was the wrong choice, because he's close friends with the chief. They go to church together.
The valley is not that big. It's really not.
And that's what brings us to step 2, keeping the story away from Fox 13. Multiple officers tell us the mayor called a mandatory police department meeting.
You'll be investigated, you'll be disciplined. If you talk about this, you're going to be disciplined. She was very upset. Somebody in our agency had gone to the media. She told us, and I quote her, and this is Colleen Potter from Heber City, that she believes in karma and karma's a
Mayor, is it true that you told a room full of officers that, quote, karma is a bitch? She would not answer, but the city attorney admitted it's true. And if that wasn't enough, the so-called investigation raised even more eyebrows.
The only way that you can get in trouble here is if you don't do what we ask you to do.
Videos obtained by Fox 13 showing Sheriff Rigby interviewing no one until after clearing the chief, lecturing officers instead of asking questions.
What Dave Booth did is not even use of force. So it really comes down to the future, your future in the police department.
2 officers said they were retaliated against, and the city spent thousands of dollars settling the case.
Heber City does not endorse a culture of bullying or intimidation.
One of the officers also reported Rigby to POST, Peace Officer Standards and Training, the state agency in charge of investigating and disciplining police.
We need to be open, we need to be transparent. There's laws that require us to do that.
13 months later, Rigby was scheduled to be the director of POST, despite the complaint and an active investigation tied to that interview.
You can just hit play.
You can dig in your heels and say,
And that's not what I'm doing.
this is how I feel and no one's going to change. And okay, that's your decision. You just won't get any trusted positions having to do with DT and use of force and sergeant and those kinds of things because you're not willing to learn and be open-minded to it.
Would you like me to watch all of it? Or?
Rigby said he could not talk about the case because of a conflict of interest with the active investigation.
As an incoming post director, it's not appropriate for me to speak about that matter. There's a pending case right now.
Were you asked about it as part of your interview process?
I'm sorry. I'm not able to speak to it, Adam, at this point.
Rigby's swearing-in ceremony was suddenly postponed after this interview and never rescheduled. He was originally appointed by Utah Department of Public Safety Commissioner Jess Anderson upon recommendation by Post Council and with the approval of Governor Spencer Cox.
It didn't come to my attention.
He says the video is concerning, but that he didn't know about it until after the decision was made, even though we first published it in December 2021.
Your perception is wrong.
His time of hire actually can be pushed back. Worst case scenario, why would you allow yourself to go down a certain path of what appears to be and has been represented as threatening?
Had you ever Googled Jared Rigby's name prior to the appointment?
As far as a Google search, no.
If he did, he would have found our investigation was one of the top, if not the top, search results.
I wouldn't expect anybody sitting on Post Council to say, hey, wait a minute, let's Google his name. Well, they already know him.
But most of the members on that search committee said they didn't know about the video or witness intimidation complaint. Sheriff Nate Curtis declined to comment. Some say it absolutely would have changed the way they made decisions in the hiring or interview process.
Rigby was not your first choice.
Yeah, I had selected a different individual other than Jared Rigby at that time.
Deputy Director Alex Garcia was the other top candidate, but after he was told he'd have the job, Post Council took a vote and chose to only recommend Rigby for the position.
Did you feel like your hands were tied?
I was provided one name. It came from Post Council, and I moved forward with that name.
Did you have any other concerns about Rigby other than this, what we're talking about tonight? I'm not gonna elaborate on that.
He says Post was not able to investigate the witness intimidation complaint against Rigby because Post is not allowed to investigate ethics under statute.
I'm not sure what I can answer for you, Adam.
I mean, it's out there. He's recorded saying those remarks.
Scott Stevenson used to be the Post director until he retired last summer. Now he's the executive director of Utah's largest police union. He says Rigby was the wrong choice and wrote a letter to the governor after this interview.
When I saw that video, for me, I was surprised, to say the least.
What you're saying is it looks like he had his mind made up.
Yes. I mean, why else would you make those statements?
Get in.
This is what Rigby was hired to investigate, and this was his conclusion. What Chief Booth did is not use of force, much less excessive use of force, because it's not a technique or tactic taught by Post. Stevenson says putting your knee on the back of someone's neck isn't taught by Post either, but it's still use of force.
And you have to lay hands on them. That's use of force. His opinion is concerning to me and probably should be with the public.
I appreciate the citizens of this great state who see the Fox 13 story for what it is, a misleading and inaccurate report.
When we return, Sheriff Jared Rigby fights back with a selfie video posted in the middle of the night.
They hang out together. They're buddies. How can you say you did a full, thorough investigation when your friend did your investigation?
This process should be started over anew in a transparent fashion.
If you went and opened up Sheriff Jared Rigby's personnel file today, you'd find there are more comments about this story than any other case in his career. He's asked friends and members of his church to launch a campaign to fight back, and it started with one of the oldest tricks in the book. If you don't like the message, shoot the messenger. He says we took his words out of context. One of the reasons we've published the whole video online for you to decide.
There is no excessive use of force. And so your perception is wrong.
This clip shows Wasatch County Sheriff Jared Rigby interviewing a police officer who crossed the thin blue line, reporting his chief for excessive use of force.
It really comes down to the future, your future in the police department.
Sure.
So you can dig in your heels and say,
and that's not what I'm doing.
This is how I feel and no one's going to change. And okay, that's your decision. You just won't get any trusted positions having to do with DT and use of force and sergeant and those kinds of things because you're not willing to learn and be open-minded to it.
I cannot believe you would even wander into that area. That is the creation of the thin blue line.
It's the same video Governor Spencer Cox didn't know existed. Ultimately, his decision, Rigby is not the person the public wants in charge of training and investigating every officer in Utah.
What were your thoughts when you did see the video?
Yeah, I did not see that video prior to the appointment. I did see it afterwards. It certainly raised some concerns. I'm grateful we got to the best result, however that had to be.
In your trainings, you've never been taught to punch someone?
Not in the throat, no.
Would you like me to watch all of it, or?
We interviewed Rigby for more than an hour in December, but the entire time, he refused to answer questions about the video.
As an incoming post director, it's not appropriate for me to speak about that matter.
His would-be future boss, Commissioner Jess Anderson, said he also wanted an explanation, that it's not just appropriate for him to talk about it, it's critical.
Why would you allow yourself to go down a certain path of what appears to be and has been represented as threatening?
That Friday night at 11:04 p.m., Rigby posted this selfie video instead of answering our questions.
Fox 13 provided an incomplete video that was cut and spliced multiple times.
That's true, we didn't show the full 93-minute video during our newscast, but we have uploaded it online.
The only way that you can get in trouble here is if you don't do what we ask you to do.
The clips we've shown so far are not the only times he brings up the officer's potential lack of a future with Heber City PD.
This is the determination. You're going to have to wrap your mind around it and then from here on out move in that direction, at least if you're going to work for Heber.
Mm-hmm.
That's what it's meant to be.
After this video was recorded, the officer looked for a new job, quit Heber City PD, and started working for federal law enforcement. 2 other officers also quit and accused the city of retaliation.
Are you aware that the city spent thousands of dollars settling that case because of the way you handled it?
I can't speak to that now.
What you're saying is not changing my perspective of what I saw. Nothing's going to change that. That's why we're here, right?
Park City Police Chief Wade Carpenter was a member of the Post Director Search Committee. He says Rigby told him this interview was not an internal affairs interview. It was a coaching and counseling session.
It was in no way my intention to come across threatening in any way. I told the officer I was only offering counseling and correction. Those are the words I used.
We're doing an internal affairs investigation for Heber City Police Department, and that's what we're doing. We're doing an IA.
Sheriff Rigby also says he cleared the chief at the center of that video before conducting this interview, even though this officer was the key eyewitness who reported the chief.
We've been taught specifically to not grab people by the throat.
No, I disagree. You've been taught to not do a chokehold.
How would you describe your relationship with Chief Booth?
If I go into answering that question, it goes into answering a lot of the other issues that we're already speaking about right now.
Did you interview Chief Booth as part of your investigation?
Adam?
I didn't see it in your report, so does that mean you did not interview him?
I did interview him, and I'm not able to speak to him.
Why wasn't it in your report then?
It is.
Well, we're still waiting to see the documentation of that interview, if it exists. We do have reports and video for every other interview, and the city says that's the complete file.
It's not like it's a witch hunt for someone.
The chief declines to answer whether Rigby actually interviewed him. You were under investigation for putting your hand on someone's throat. I just want to know what happened.
Which never happened.
And we have the video, sir. Weeks later, Rigby packed the room with supporters, friends, family, colleagues, and members of his church.
Jared is a truly ethical man who holds great integrity.
The scriptures say, "Ye shall know them by their fruits."
They also presented this letter, supposedly written by Heber City, thanking Rigby for clearing the chief. It says the investigation was thorough and arduous, even though Rigby's report shows he didn't interview anyone until after clearing the chief.
We have an obligation to police ourselves. Nobody's above the law.
This man is a veteran officer who left the department but still fears retaliation. We interviewed him in 2021, and even then, he said he knew Rigby would do what he could to clear Chief Booth.
This is done by his friend, Jared Rigby, the sheriff. They're friends. They hang out together. They're buddies. How can you say you did a full, thorough investigation when your friend did your investigation?
He calls it circling the wagon, especially after we found emails proving that letter from Heber City was actually written in part by Rigby to himself. Quote, "Thanks for the latest draft. I've been over it and sent it to the attorney I've hired." Here's one of the lines that never made it to the final draft. Heber City remains committed to transparency in this case.
After the break.
Do you know if Jared Rigby still plans to sue the state?
Yeah, I don't know anything.
The state does its best to regain your trust, even after allegations from the inside of a rigged process.
If this is in the paper tomorrow, or I'm on the news tomorrow, how will this look to the public? Everybody in the industry is paying attention to it.
What you've watched to this point is a collection of inside information and documents showing years of widespread concern with Sheriff Jared Rigby. The final vote came down to a committee of his peers, including other chiefs and sheriffs. It also came down to a woman who thought the process was rigged even before she discovered our reporting.
It really comes down to the future, your future in the police department.
Sure.
So you can dig in your heels and say,
and that's not what I'm doing.
This is how I feel and no one's going to change. And okay, that's your decision. You just won't get any trusted positions.
Was the advice stern? Yeah. But every time I yell at my son in the shower in the morning saying get to school, it's very stern.
Most of this committee initially said they had never seen the video of Sheriff Jared Rigby accused of bullying and intimidating a police officer until it was too late. Park City Police Chief Wade Carpenter now says he saw parts of it, but never thought it was appropriate to bring up as part of Rigby's interview process.
Our role is not investigative. Even though some of us have that ability, that is not our role.
The Utah Department of Public Safety disagreed. Eventually, they saw our report and stopped the appointment from going through just days before Rigby's swearing-in ceremony.
I'm in a spot right now where I'm going to be post director.
Were you asked about it as part of your interview process?
I'm sorry, I'm not able to speak to it, Adam, at this point.
Miley Liu was the only person who voted against Rigby in October. About a week later, she wrote this letter. I wanted on the record that I felt the entire process and recommendation of Rigby was a setup from the get-go. It was very obvious to me from the get-go that Chief Carpenter and the 5 members on the interview panel knew who they wanted, and it was all a staged process. The commissioner didn't go that far, but he did say there's no doubt Chief Carpenter was aware of the video before voting.
He was very well aware of the case and what was going on within his neighboring county there and the situation.
Chief Carpenter has attended at least 2 closed-door meetings with the governor's office to lobby on behalf of Rigby.
Good morning, how are you?
Sevier County Sheriff Nate Curtis was also part of that 6-member search committee. He said he will not confirm or deny whether he had seen the video before Rigby's interview because, quote, "I don't think it matters." In the end, he was the only person left supporting Rigby for a job he was no longer going to get.
We can't allow for any eroding of that public trust. I was able to shake his hand and wish him well, but at the same time, it's in the best interest of the state to be able to move forward.
We couldn't just stand by and watch that happen. These are all educated individuals, and they're always aware of what's going on around them. If they read the news, then they can't avoid what the work you've done.
Discharge the duties of my office with fidelity.
It took months for the state to come up with a new candidate, but in August, Travis Freese was sworn into the position after what we're told is one of the most thorough background checks in the history of Utah Post directors.
The investigators were all over me, and they should be. And I think they felt extra pressure. I think they always take it serious. And but yeah, there was definitely extra pressure, I'm sure, this time. And yeah, I felt it, but it's good.
Unlike Rigby, Reese has never been reported to Post. He says he's committed to making Utah law enforcement the best in the country, promising fair, thorough, and objective investigations. Because if his agency doesn't police the police, the question is, who will?
When we do have bad circumstances where officers do bad things, I take it personal because I've dedicated my whole life to this profession. I don't like when people take away from that. I don't want to let the commissioner down. I don't want to let the state of Utah down.
Sheriff Rigby could still file a lawsuit against the state, but his team is being quieter than they used to be on whether they still plan to do that. Of course, we'll stay on top of it and continue asking questions of those whose job it is to police the police. Thank you for watching our special report. I'm Fox 13 investigative reporter Adam Herpetz. Good night.